Who says high-end phones have to be expensive? What's going on, guys? I'm Aaron from PhoneDog.com, and yet may not have all the specifications of the Samsung Galaxy S2 or the HTC Amaze 4G on T-Mobile, but the Samsung Galaxy S Blaze 4G is a pretty reasonably equipped smartphone that comes in at a pretty good price as well. $150 as opposed to $200 or $250 for some of the other high-end devices on the market. This thing is packing a 1.5 gigahertz dual-core Snapdragon processor. It's got a 3.97-inch Super AMOLED display, so not quite 4 inches, but pretty close. A 5-megapixel camera on the back with 720p HD video recording, and Android 2.3 with TouchWiz version 4.0. So if perhaps the Galaxy S2 series is a little bit too expensive for you, the Blaze 4G is an awesome smartphone that fits pretty well in the hand as well. Now, is this the ultimate phone to get? Should you get this on T-Mobile? Or, if you're looking at a bunch of carriers, is this the ultimate kind of low high-end, high mid-range phone to have? We'll find out in the full review, but first, some love to Best Buy Mobile for hooking us up with phones like this for use in our One Paw Bandit game. When you go into Best Buy Mobile, you'll walk out working. They'll help you set up your email, your web, your display settings, your camera settings, and more. So when you walk out the door, you're set up, you're good to go. You don't have to waste any time doing that, thanks to Best Buy Mobile. Let's take a look. Blaze 4G. Is this thing an awesome device? Is it blazing fast? See what I did there? We'll find out starting right now. Look, I love high-end phones as much as the next person, but let's be honest, not everybody needs a high-end smartphone, and for a lot of people, you can get a great phone with a lot of features at a great price. But the Blaze 4G is one of those devices. The full name is the Samsung Galaxy S Blaze 4G, and it's available as of the 28th in all T-Mobile retail stores nationwide for $149.99. So available now in some select stores. The press release said March 21st, limited availability with full rollout occurring on March 28th. So you may be able to get this at your local T-Mobile store, but again, $149.99. Spec-wise, it's really not that far from the Galaxy S2, so they're not calling it Galaxy S2, but kind of think of this device like the Samsung Captivate Glide, which came out on AT&T and had that QWERTY keyboard. It's very similar, and even though the specs don't quite match up to the Galaxy S2 line, it had a 1 gigahertz dual-core processor, for example. It has a lot of similarities to the popular line and sold quite a few devices around the world. So the Galaxy S Blaze 4G has a 1.5 gigahertz dual-core Snapdragon processor. You've got a 3.97-inch Super AMOLED display here, so no Super AMOLED Plus. And it's also kind of odd that it's under 4 inches. It's like right there, that borderline. It's technically, I'd say 4 inches, but if you want to get technical with it, 3.97 inches. It also has a 5-megapixel camera on the back with 720p HD video recording as opposed to 1080p. So a couple of things are missing from the highest of the high end on Samsung's lineup. You've got Android 2.3 here with TouchWiz version 4.0 out of the gate. So you can see, things are relatively speedy. TouchWiz 4.0, as far as I'm concerned, and I haven't gotten any official confirmation from Samsung or anything like that, but it does seem much more fluid, and I've said this with all the Galaxy S2 devices as well. It seems to be a lot more fluid, and it seems to work much better with Android than some of the older versions like TouchWiz 3. You remember it might have been kind of clunky and laggy. Kind of remember that from the Infuse and some of the past, the Droid Charge, and some of the previous Samsung devices. You can really see it's much more fluid over here. But 3.97 inches, so let's just say 4 inches, just for the sake of saying 4 inches. But it fits well in the hand. And that 4 inches is going to be a nice sweet spot for a lot of people that kind of like that form factor of the iPhone, but think that the screen might be a little bit too small, and they don't really want something like the Galaxy Note or maybe the Titan with a 4.7-inch or 5.3-inch display. This is a nice balance for them. So TouchWiz 4.0 here, and you can see the design actually kind of resembles, it's funny because in the first impressions in the unboxing I was like, I can't remember what exactly this resembles, and everybody was like, BlackBerry, BlackBerry, and it really does. You look at the top here, and it does look kind of similar to the BlackBerry Bold 9700 with the kind of chrome edges there, and just the way it's tapered off at the top. But you've got your power button over here on the right side, your micro SD card slot. Out of the gate, you do get a micro SD card pre-installed, a 4 gigabyte micro SD card, which I unexpectedly removed. Sorry about that, little Samsung. Sorry about that, Blaze. And then you get the volume rocker over here, and your micro USB charging port at the bottom, 3.5mm headphone jack on the top. So again, a little bit thicker, but it's still got a nice feel to it. It really fits well in the hand. And this supports T-Mobile's HSPA Plus network up to 42 megabits per second. And while we'll talk about that a little bit later, probably in part 2 of the video, you're really not going to see those speeds. That's a theoretical peak for T-Mobile's network. That said, I've seen some pretty decent speeds, depending on where I test it in the city of Charlotte. But out of the gate, you see some stuff here, 411 and more. You get game-based. You get a lot of T-Mobile stuff on this device. Lookout Security, Mobile Life Organizer, More For Me. You get Netflix, you get My Account, My Device, and then we'll scroll over. You get Media Hub, which is a Samsung thing, but you get Polaris Office, Pro Apps, T-Mobile Mall, T-Mobile Name ID, T-Mobile TV, T-Mobile Video Chat, which I forgot to capitalize the M in that, and it drives me nuts every time I look at it, but that's okay. Telenav GPS Navigator as well, Visual Voicemail, Yelp, and Zinio. So you get a lot pre-installed, and the downside is when you go in here and take a look at applications, you can't uninstall any of the T-Mobile stuff. It's down there and it's on there to stay. So for those people like me, not going to use 3/4 of that stuff with the exception of maybe my device or my account. It's kind of frustrating that you can't remove it, and then, unfortunately, that's a place where AT&T and Sprint have really listened to their consumers and said, hey, we'll give you the opportunity to uninstall most of this bloatware. T-Mobile and Verizon, as of right now, kind of like, they don't seem to be as attentive to that. So, I mean, points off there. I wish you could remove those things, but otherwise, you get a lot of TouchWiz 4 look and feel here. A lot of the TouchWiz 4 look and feel. You can see the shortcuts up in the notifications bar, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, GPS, silent mode, and auto rotation, as you can see there. And you got your dock down here in the bottom. 7 home screens. And you can just see as I'm doing some of these gestures, it's a very fluid device and very easy to use. And of course, you get the weather widget. I've always been a fan of the TouchWiz widgets, and we'll try to move through these pretty quickly because if you've watched the videos, you know what the widgets are capable of. So same functionality here. I can either go here and click Add, or I can just press and hold on the screen, and it brings up the Add to Home menu. Now, unlike typical Gingerbread, it doesn't bring it up in that like a boxy menu that you see that pops up in the middle of the screen on most Gingerbread devices. It pops up in the bottom in this little custom TouchWiz look and feel, and it's nice, and it's nice little fluid functionality. You can see as I scroll from side to side, it scrolls kind of like album covers in the music application, but you've got some cool widgets like AccuWeather, Bookmark, Buddies Now, you got the agenda, you got the ability to customize the home screen, digital clock, and more, so I can bring that one out, and you've seen that, a typical Samsung one, and actually that debuted with the Samsung Galaxy S2 in Barcelona in 2011, so you may remember that widget, and that's one of my favorites from Samsung. But another big thing for me about TouchWiz version 4.0 is the ability to customize a lot of the Samsung widgets. For example, we'll go in here and take a look at weather, and you can see the ability to customize the size. That's huge for me because, you have a home screen like this, and let's say you have a little bit of space left, and, a lot of the widgets are too big, perhaps some are too small, but you look at these widgets with HTC or with some of these other manufacturers and their user interfaces, you can't customize the widget size. So you're kind of stuck. If you don't want these widgets here, you can either move them around and try and make space, or you're out of luck, and you may have to use one of your other 7 home screens. With Samsung, you can customize, and this is an actual T-Mobile widget, so I don't think you can customize that, but you can customize a lot of the TouchWiz 4 widgets, and that's a really nice perk. Another thing you can do that I've always been a fan of, you can come in here to settings, take a look at display, go to screen display, and you can change the font. This is just a neat little feature I kind of like. I can change it to Choco Cookie, for example. Choco Cookie, that sounds really good. It is 537, and apparently my sweet tooth is kicking in. So you can see, much like typical Samsung devices of the past, all the way back to some of Verizon's messaging devices that were Samsung, you can change the font around, you can change the home screen and lock screen wallpaper, and the clock position as well. So in terms of personalization, HTC may have a lock on that in a lot of ways, but I think Samsung's done a really good job over the past couple of months with TouchWiz 4.0 and with allowing some custom font things and some things like that. So we'll go into messaging and take a look here, and you can see typical T-Mobile stuff, and you've got your button here, and then when you scroll it over, or when you go over into landscape mode rather, you can see kind of this form factor here. Welcome to T-Mobile. I can scroll back and forth like that, and I've got kind of a preview of both panes. Now, that's really cool on the Galaxy Note because it has a 5.3-inch display. It's really not that beneficial on this device because it only has a 3.7-inch display, so you probably don't need those kind of columns, whereas, with the Galaxy Note, you can take up that 5.3-inch screen real estate pretty easily by doing that. And it's kind of a nice touch because you're like, oh, big screen, I'm going to take advantage of it. But you get 2 keypads installed here. You get Samsung's keypad, and you get Swipe out of the box. And then here's Samsung's keypad. And you can, of course, download additional third-party keyboards from from Google Play. I need to make sure I say it right. Google Play. I'm still saying Android Market in a lot of these videos. But Google Play, and one of my personal favorites is the Ice Cream Sandwich keyboard, which you can download in a free and a paid version. So we'll say the Quick Brown Fox is craving sunshine. Quick Brown Fox is stuck in the office, and he's craving sunshine. So apparently the Quick Brown Fox is Craig Sunshine, but you can see here in landscape mode. And I think for a lot of people, landscape mode is going to be more than enough. But for people with larger thumbs, you may want to look at something with a little bit bigger display. Perhaps the Amaze 4G or perhaps the Galaxy S2, both with 4.5-inch displays on T-Mobile, as opposed to 3.97. But still, in landscape mode, pretty decent. You can see the transition effects are reasonably fast. I don't want to spend too much time in that. Let's take a look at web as well. And again, you can kind of see some of these HSPA Plus speeds at work. Although I will say it's rush hour right now, so if the speeds are a little bit slow, that may be the culprit. So we're loading up right now on PhoneDog, and you can see it changes the font on the site as well. And even before the page is fully loaded, you can see pinch to zoom, relatively responsive, getting a little bit of checkerboarding there, but nothing too major. And then out here, typical settings, Windows, new window. And I can come in here to Windows while this is loading and take a look, for example. And you can see where I left off. So I can go to a new window, load up whatever, web to go, let's say. And I can scroll right back and pick up where I left off on PhoneDog.com. So I can scroll over here, for example, and go into, and wait for it to load up. I can go into our rankings program, which is pretty cool. I'll go to PhoneDog.com, and I'm going to switch out and say rankings, where you can rank your own smartphone. Actually, check this out if you haven't. It's pretty cool. You can go to PhoneDog.com/rankings and vote for your favorite smartphone. So it's user-driven voting, which I think is super cool, and it's better than us saying, oh, hey, here's our top 5. Those are well and good, but here you can have a say in the official smartphone rankings as well, so you can see what's trending. But pinch to zoom, very responsive on this bad boy, though. Again, you get some checkerboarding as well, and then landscape to portrait transitions, nice and fast. On that front also. So typical layout here, and you can see again, I want to highlight the fact 1.5 gigahertz dual core Snapdragon processor seems to be running relatively well, but you get the typical Samsung stuff over here, the ability to come in here and clear out the RAM and to see my active applications, which of course just canceled out as I cleared out the memory. And then typical TouchWiz interface here with contacts, and I have Billy Bob here as an example. I can click on that and I have a picture for him and a fake number, and I can go up here to my tabs and see history, activities, and photos. So TouchWiz isn't necessarily laid out, in terms of personal information management. It's not laid out as great as some of the others. I still think Sense 4 or Sense, all of the Sense versions have a lock on this because they do a great job with kind of separating messages, individual pictures that are person's tagged in, missed calls, and more. Though I will say it's nice to have the history with Billy Bob, the activities, and the photos, and of course I can quickly favorite that contact, and I can see down here where this person works or have some notes, and then I can easily call or message home as well. Same thing over here in the phone interface. Not a lot's changed, particularly if you're coming from another TouchWiz device. And you can see logs, contacts, favorites, and I just swipe over and see. So you can see logs, contacts, and favorites, and I simply swipe over and I can see groups as well. And of course, typical island landscape here. Or island keys rather, with some shortcuts down here, call, voicemail, message, and then back, and you got your capacitive buttons down here at the bottom, menu, home, back, and search.